Welcome to Fronts and Factions. I'm David. This is part 2 of a 3-part video where I go over problems and solutions for Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. This second part is based on the plot and story. This adventure is very reminiscent to a 90s action adventure kind of story. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride and can create some kind of problems due to that very fast paced. So this video is going to go over some of those problems and some ways to make the adventure feel a little bit more cohesive and a little bit more put together. First problem that I noticed when going through and looking at the story is that there's a lot of missing foreshadowing. The adventure can kind of seem very episodic and reactionary at times. Players are shoved into problems very last minute, basically throughout the entire thing. Don't really get an opportunity to deal with things proactively, and this can make the problem seem kind of disjointed from each other. If run as is, you might hear things to the effect of, "Wait, so why did we do that?" Or "What was the point of that?" Right? Case in point, and spoilers for the adventure from now on. You can go and my players went and helped Dalamar in the Dread Wolf Cave in the Northern Wastes, and he gets this little piece of a rock, and they're like, "Okay, what did that have to do with anything? I'm confused," right? And if run as written, that sort of thing is going to be pretty common. They're going to be fighting officers and regiments, not knowing why. They're going to be sent on missions, not understanding how that's connected to the greater picture. And second problem that goes along with that is that there's just a lot of villains in this adventure, and a lot of them are very they show up right before you fight them. You often don't even know who they are until you fight them. And then meanwhile, there's also some villains that you never meet. The very last encounter of this adventure is against Consaldi Fire Eyes, who is barely mentioned for a lot of the adventure, right? And it would be really easy to just miss that foreshadowing. So something to be very, very careful of. And then it also kind of goes into this big military organization that isn't really spelled out very well for the players. And really, these two problems can commingle in a number of ways. First, just add a lot more foreshadowing. Have NPCs mention problems before they happen. Give the potential for players to do things in slightly different orders when possible, especially with optional quests and in the Northern Wastes. Add a clearer chain of command to the Dragon Queen's army so that they can feel progression, so that it doesn't feel like, oh, I just fight officer and then officer and officer and it never ends, right? One thing that I did that I was really happy about is pretty early on with one of those optional missions, going and rescuing some scouts. I had the scouts go and talk about, hey, there's actually two different divisions of the Dragon Queen's army. There is a northern section that is led by Belifion and Lahazet, and there's a southern section led by Consaldi Fire Eyes. When you do that, they then understand, oh, okay, we're dealing with two different kind of regiments. You can also feel free to have those villains be more personal to the characters. When I actually had one of my characters go and have a roll, because he wanted to roll to find out if he knew anything about this Consaldi Fire Eyes, and he rolled a nat 20, and I was like, absolutely, you've met her. It was a long time ago. And you have no idea how this person is now like a general in the armies, but you have to assume that she's probably changed a lot. Now we've made things personal. There is a horrendously missed opportunity with the fact that Lahazet is a renegade mage, and you have the black robe sorcerer back in Calaman Wyhan, who they're both black mages. Why doesn't she bring him up? I absolutely had her do that. I had her be like, hey, so it sounds like we've got a renegade black mage named Lahazet. He's really good at poisons. And now we've got this foreshadowing from, sessions and sessions and sessions from back when they're level 5 comes forward when they're level 9, when they go and deal with Lahazet. And it'd be like, oh, wait, he was that guy that we had talked about. That's where he is. Oh, he's working here, right? And then the players feel good and they feel smart because they picked up on those pieces, versus if you don't lay that there, they're not going to get it, right? It also helps because it makes them feel like they're progressing, right? You want to make it really clear that there's kind of 3 pillars of what's going on when it comes to the Dragon Queen's organization. You have Lahazet and Belathion, right, which get dealt with first. You have Lord Soth, right, which gets dealt with second, and then you have Consulti Fire Eyes, which is dealt at the end. And you can buffer those in. I would recommend you go and maybe add a little bit in so that last fight against Consulti Fire Eyes isn't just right after those other boss fights, so that there's some time for that to sink in and they realize kind of the stakes. Alternatively, you can simplify, remove some of these villains, right? The easiest way to go about that would be to remove that final battle against Consultes altogether. You could have it be that maybe Belathion is in charge of the whole thing, and when Belathion dies, then Lord Soth takes over, and Red Ruin is like the on-the-ground commander, so that when the party goes and fights Red Ruin before going into the castle, it's clear that, oh man, you've now taken off their main person who is actually running the battle. They're going to be really disorganized now. And then they go in, and then they go and fight it. They have that fight at the end, and then they feel really good. I didn't do that, and a part of that honestly just had to do with the fact that my characters rolled really well, and I made that personal connection with one of my characters in Consulti, which let me feel good about having that fight continue to happen. But definitely feel free to remove it if you think that it will be too much, right? Because there's a lot of fighting at the very end, and it might be draining, where they're like, wait, I thought I fought the end boss. Wait, what's this guy? Wait, what's this guy? There's like 4 end bosses in a row, right? Which we'll talk about in part 3 when we talk about encounter balance. I'll tell you that. So definitely 2 different solutions with that. Just think it over, look through, look at your players, think about what they're going to want. And definitely if you think that they're going to want a more simple thing where they're dealing with just 1 or 2 main BBEGs, feel free to simplify that down. Third problem that I would say is Clystron in the Northern Wastes and Dragonels. And this is something that could be really easy to be missed, but it is essential that you don't. So this is less of a change and more of a reinforcement to something that's already brought in. So Clystron is brought up in the Northern Waste in the Heart's Hollow section, and therefore theoretically if the party never finds or goes to Heart's Hollow, they will never meet him, and if they don't meet Clystron, the game literally doesn't work. Literally doesn't work. The module assumes that you meet Clystron, assumes that Clystron tags along, and assumes that the party is aware of how much Clystron loves Dragonels and his kind of obsession with them. So this is going to be something where you absolutely need to make sure that it happens, and you need to make sure that it is abundantly clear how he feels about them, and then make sure that you do have that last thing as the party leaves the Northern Waste, so that when Clystron goes over to Calaman, that makes sense. If that doesn't, I think the only thing that you could do at that point, you would have to scrap a whole section of the last part, maybe give the party a magic carpet or something. But there's not a lot of great other solutions. So really important that you don't miss it, or else you're going to be scrambling. So it's just good to know with that. And really, with my last note, just feel free to have this adventure get personal, right? I said right at the beginning that this is very much akin to kind of the action adventure, right? But we remember that at the end of many 90s action adventure, after the party solves the big world-ending problem, that is not the end. The end is something personal, right? That was like every 90s action adventure, right? So feel free to have that happen, right? Maybe Consuldi Fire Eyes doesn't challenge them at the end, but maybe she's surrounded Darrett and she challenges them to combat, and they have to do so to save Darrett or to save some other NPCs that the party has fallen in love with, right? Maybe, Tatina Rookledust is out, in the field fiddling around, and the party realizes, oh my god, there's this giant red dragon that's coming straight for her. Whatever it needs for things to be personal, that's what's going to make your players care, right? And there's a bunch of other ways to do it. I already gave an example earlier of, if you have any mages of high sorcery, make them really care about the fact that they have this renegade mage Lahazet that is now working for the Dragon Queen. That could be really personal. Maybe they know each other. Maybe Lahazet was their teacher, right? If you have a Knight of Solamnia, they could get really passionate about the fact that there is this cursed Knight of Solamnia, Lord Soth, who really betrayed the whole order and is a big part of the fact that the whole world doesn't trust Knights of Solamnia like they used to. And even the green shield that is brought up in the beginning, right, that just is like, oh yeah, by the way, here's this shield that's super important, but it's just a +1 shield, everybody. Let's have that shield matter. In my adventure, I had a whole recurring thing where all of these NPCs were like, oh, there's something special about this shield, but I don't know what it is. And it wasn't until they were rescuing captives in Camp Carrion Clay, and the black dragon comes out and breathes acid, and the person with the shield goes and pulls it up, and then that green shield shines, and they get advantage on the saving throw against the breath weapon, like they had dragon armor. And then when they bring back that egg to Heart's Hollow, Nez goes and takes part of the shield and combines it with the scales to go and give over that set of armor, right? It was really powerful. And that was only powerful because I made it personal and I made it matter, right? So don't be scared to make those things matter, so that the players feel that sense of internalization and that it's personal, right? And I think that's something that they do super well with the Bacarises. It's always completely personal with them, right? Which is why I think it's so well done. Feel free to make it personal with the other villains too. And I think that you'll find that your characters are a lot more motivated to do something about them. Thank you all so much. I will go ahead and have the third part of this series. We'll go over the encounters. Like I said in the first video, I am not going to do that until I am done with the adventure. And that is not going to happen for a little bit. We are getting towards the end, but definitely not done. So there will be a delay between the third part of the video. Just something I thought was important, because I can say theoretically what problems that I think will happen in those encounters, but I can't say for absolutely sure until I run them and I find out how much I actually need to tweak them to make them work. So with that being said, you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.